Greetings, pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today I've got something pretty exciting to share with you. We're working today in Unity, and what we're going to be doing is working with a procedural minimap script. And as you see in the thumbnail, this thing is really cool. And so this is a purchased asset, and I'm going to show it to you. We're going to work all the way through it, and I'm going to show you how to get it set up, and then I'm going to show you how I enhanced it. And I added things like the ability to show our level geometry and how to have interior and exterior spaces. Okay, so here we are in our example setup, and let me jump over and show you the final product. Then we'll come back and I'll show you how to get there. Okay, so this is our setup. I'm going to jump over to the final product here, and I'm going to hit play, and this goes to the full screen. And as you can see, we have our working minimap in the corner there. We have our enemy Bob over here. Here he is. I can walk up to him. You can see him on the minimap, and as I get further away, he works properly. There we go. And then we have a building here. You'll notice that on the minimap, the building shows up as gray. And if I enter the building, all of the exterior spaces go away, and I can now see the interior walls of our building. And then when I leave again, everything comes back. So I'm going to show you how I did all of this and what all the steps are. Now, take into account that the building here and the land here is made with ProBuilder. And I do have some tutorials coming up on ProBuilder and an incredible review. It's an amazing piece of software. You guys are going to love it. But we're not going to go over exactly how we did that today. This is just stand-in geometry, so make your own kind of island. It really doesn't matter what the shape is. This is just for demonstration purposes. All right, so let's jump out of this. Let's go back to our beginning and let's see how this works. So first of all, if I go to the asset store here, and if I go to my downloads, let's see if we can bring this up for you. I've got a whole bunch of stuff in here, but down here, this procedural minimap. Let me click that and go here. So this is $5.99, guys, and this is some of the best $5.99 I've spent. So what this allows you to do is create this really cool minimap with custom icons based upon your custom objects in the world. And it does this thing where when the icons go off the minimap, they get shrunken down to a smaller size. And then when you come back close enough to them, they come back up. That's an incredible deal here, guys, for just $5.99. And the guy is still working on it. And I can tell you from experience, I have not yet written my review, but I have a very favorable review to give because I wrote to him with questions about how to set it up at first. And he walked me through it, step by step. And so very good support, excellent product, highly recommend it. So we're building off of this today. So you go into once you've purchased it, you go here into the downloads, and you're going to have to find it in here. Mine is right here, and say download and then import. Okay. So once I've done that, let's come over here. You'll see I have a folder here, procedural minimap, and there's even a how to use. Here's all the instructions for how to use it. Very good stuff here. And there are multiple demonstration scenes. We're actually going to use one of the demo scenes and kind of break it down. So we go into the demos, demo 1. I'm going to drag and drop that into our scene here. And you can see it puts a whole bunch of extra stuff on the screen here. This is his demonstration thing about here it is, and then you can spawn some enemies just to see it. And it is great, but I don't really need it. So what I'm going to do is just take the actual prefab out and move it right underneath my FPS controller and say, this will break your prefab instance. That's okay. You're not breaking anything that you downloaded from the guy or from your purchase. This is just breaking the instance in our scene, and that's okay. So we'll continue with that, and I will select the rest of demo 1 and delete it. Okay, so now we have our minimap. So if I just hit play right now, you'll see that I run around, and it's kind of there, but it's not really working, and you'll notice I can't look up and down. But it is on the screen. We do have some screen assets, which is pretty cool, but things are a little broken, and that's because you have to follow the instructions, but I'll show you how all that works. So in our minimap prefab, first thing we're going to do, we're going to select it, and you'll see this spot right here under Game Objects, Player. We're missing the player. So I'm going to drag and drop my FPS controller right on top of that. Then I'm going to expand it, and I'm going to select the minimap camera. Now this is the camera that is up in the sky looking down at us, and it is going to be the one that actually does all of the icons for all of our characters, your objectives, whatever map markers you have. But the one thing you do have to do is up here under the tag, turn that off of main camera and say untagged. Now if I hit play and we run around the world here, you can see I can look up and down again. And now you can see the minimap spinning because it is rotating with me as I move about the world. Okay, excellent. So that's all working, but we don't have anything to look at yet on the minimap, and we don't see the land, and we don't see any characters yet. So we'll work on that next. All right, so now with this selected, the minimap prefab selected, you'll see we have a whole bunch of options here. These first set of settings are how the camera and how the actual minimap works with the world. I'm not going to change any of that, okay? We're just going to leave all that the same here. But you will notice this says icon layer number. What that means is you need to tell this number right here what layer you've predefined as being the layer that your icons are going to be on. Now for me, that is layer 8. I've called it minimap icons, okay? So that's already set up. So if you need to create a layer, you just click up here, layer, add layer, and you can type on any layer you want here and add. So I've added 2, one for minimap icons and one for minimap geometry, or geo for short. All right, so with that complete, all of this is good, and these are the 2 default tags, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this other one to be enemy, just the word enemy with a capital E, because I have a tag here for enemy. You can see I've been experimenting. So enemy, and again, if you need to add a tag, click here, say add tag, click the little plus, type in the name of your tag, and click save. Okay? So I typed in enemy, E-N-E-M-Y, with a capital E on the front. All right, so let's make an enemy on the map. Now that we've told the prefab here, you'll see this says game objects. It says put in the game objects tags, choose icons for them. So what he means here is in this size, this is an array, so it starts off at 2. You can change it down to 0, which means you don't have anything. 1 means we just have 1, but we have 2 of these. So each of these is an icon type that you want to see on the minimap. So for example, my second tag here, I called enemy. So it's going to look for any object with the tag enemy, and it's going to replace that on the minimap with this icon. And here are the 2 sizes. The first size is the size you see when you're inside the radius of your minimap. The second size, the far size, is the size that it will be changed to when it goes off the edge, but it will remain on the edge and you'll see it in that icon size. You could make it larger if you want, but typically you want to make it smaller. And then you can choose 2 different colors, a color for, again, within the bounds, and then a second color for outside of the bounds. Okay? I'm just going to leave everything default right now. And let's come over to this secondary island over here, and we're going to create an enemy. So I'm going to say game object, 3D object, cube. There we go. And let's center him to the world. And where's he at? There he is. So we're going to move him forward of us to the second island, kind of right here in the middle, bring him up. And there he is. Okay. So let's call this cube Bob. Bob is our villain. And what I'm going to do is just make sure that Bob is tagged as an enemy. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. And now if I hit play, there we go. I'm moving around and we see Bob on the radar there. There he is. And we get close to him. You'll notice a couple things. One, we seem to kind of go underneath of Bob, but he is on the minimap. And if I move around, let's see if I can go all the way to this edge. All the way to this edge. Now you'll notice Bob got smaller. Now he got bigger. Right when we reach that threshold at the edge of the minimap, he will change to a smaller size, and now no matter how far away I get from him, I can only go so far, no matter how far away I get, he will remain that size until I get close and then he pops back on the radar. That's really cool. So this is what the asset does for you automatically. And I say automatically within the world here after you've set it up properly and told it where your camera is and all that kind of stuff. But how cool is that? Now, what we can do with Bob is if we go to our prefab here and we can say, okay, I don't like that icon, let me choose something different. You can choose anything you like, but now keep in mind that these icons, you're gonna have to make sure that it's the correct size. So if I choose a different icon, it might be a different size, and you might have to play with these numbers here to make it bigger or smaller. So I chose a different icon now. If I just hit play and go, there you go. So it's about the same size as this one. This is a little like stopwatch kind of icon, but you can import any icon you want, change it to a sprite 2D, and you can use it in place of whatever is here. So there you go. So you could have an icon that is a stopwatch thing like that. If you had a racing game or something like that, you needed extra time. So there you go. Okay, so let's change him to something a little more appropriate. I'm gonna change him back to this one. I do like that for enemies. Okay, so that's all set. Now, let's take a look at adding additional ones. Is very easy. You can just take any icon here, any enemy, and let's just duplicate them and we'll move them around. So we'll put a whole bunch all over the place, okay? So let me go up top here and just let's put a whole bunch of enemies in our game level here. There's some out in the open. There we go. So if we hit play, boom, you see a whole bunch of enemies. And now if I just start running off course here, you see they dynamically become smaller when they reach the edge of the minimap, and they get bigger as we get closer. Very cool. Now, that's just one thing. That's just Bob. So if I go to the prefab here, and you'll notice we have this other tag. So let's change this to Bob2. Or actually, I have one called Cat at the moment because I had a funny cat icon I was playing with. So let's make some of these guys cats. So if I choose this one, they won't really be cats, but let's choose this guy. Come here. Selecting through the canvas object there. Select these guys and we'll change the drop down to cat. It can be anything else you've got going on. And then we can change our icon. So now let's change this icon to something totally different. We'll make these weird arrow things, okay? There we go. So now we have two different types of enemies, two different types of icons occurring on the map, and they dynamically change size. Again, you know, it's all working, but now we have one over here of this type. You can see as I get right next to it, and then one over here, different types. So again, as many tags as you want, and to add even more, say you needed 10 of them, you just come down here and change this number to 10, and you could have 10 here. You can fully customize them all. Okay, so one thing I want to fix though is, as I mentioned, I'm kind of going underneath of the icons on the minimap, and I don't like that. So the fix for that is I'm going to open up the canvas, open up the minimap UI, and my player icon here, I'm going to move him all the way down beneath the mask. Okay, so now everything is kind of rendered in reverse order. So now as you see, as I walk up to him, now I'm kind of over top of him. And that makes more sense to me because I want to see where I am at all times. And then I want it to make sure that it's showing me in relation to the rest of the world. And when you get to something, you kind of would be standing over it, wouldn't you? Now I am really on top of it. So that kind of makes more sense to me. Cool, so we've made an improvement already. Now, let's say you don't want the minimap up here. Say you want it over in this corner. Well, to do that, I'm going to select the minimap UI. I'm going to go up here to the rectangle transform, and I'm going to say, use your pivot based upon the lower left-hand corner. Now I'm going to give it the numbers of position X, 1110, and position Y, 100. And now, if I hit play, all I've done is I've moved my whole minimap around on that canvas, so now it's in the bottom corner. And I like that a lot better. I think that's really cool, being down there in the corner. That's what I'm used to. I play a lot of the Lego games with my wife, and I'm always used to kind of seeing it in the corner there, so it's more comfortable for me. So there we go. Okay, we've made some great improvements. So now let's go ahead and start adding in some more detail to this. So we have everything all set up, and we got the minimap going, and we can see some icons of the map, but we don't see the world. And I wanted to be able to see the world. So to do that, we're just going to add a couple of things. So in my assets, I've already created some of these things, but I'm going to go through how to set them all up and kind of pretend that we create them together, okay? So a couple of things we need to make. We need to make our land here in a specific way. We need to make some tags and then a couple of new cameras. So what I'm going to do is underneath the FPS controller, you can see I have this level geo camera. And so this is just a new camera that we create. So I'm going to hide this guy, and then I will recreate it with you. So we'll select FPS controller, and I'm going to say game object camera. There we go. Let's put him underneath the FPS controller, right at the top. There we go. So let's call this GeoCam, okay? I'm going to change from skybox to solid color. And this culling mask, I'm going to set to nothing at first. And I need to talk about what the culling mask does. So the culling mask says, I'm only going to care about looking at and therefore rendering certain things. And so we want this camera to only be responsible for looking at the land and the buildings, okay? So for that, we need to make a new layer. So up here we go, layer, and I already have it here, minimap geo, but again, we say add layer, and you would type it in, minimap geo, okay? So go back to our camera and say culling mask, all I want you to look at is minimap geo. There we go, and you see here how this background color, I usually change this to black. It's gonna not care about seeing anything except the land. Now right now our camera is facing kind of forward in the world. We don't want that. We want to say go to 0, go to 80, go to 0, and on the rotation of X, let's do 90. So he's looking down and he's in the sky. So let's pull back a bit. There he is, way up there. And he is a direct child of the FPS controller. So now when I run around the world, he's actually up in the sky above me, and we don't see him yet. We don't see the output of him yet because we haven't told the game to do that yet. But he's there. Okay. So with that in place, we're going to go into our minimap prefab, open up the canvas, and open up this mask. And you can see there's a thing called texture here. This is the actual file that is being generated in real time that has all of the icons on the minimap for you. So that's really cool, and the minimap camera is using that. So if you look carefully under the procedural, I think it's under sprites, icons, no, where is it at? It's in here, prefabs, there it is. This file here is called a render texture, and that means whatever the camera sees, we're gonna create a texture out of it, kind of like taking a picture, and it's happening every frame, so it gets dynamically updated. So this file here is called minimap render texture. So if I go under the minimap prefab, the minimap camera, you'll notice here the target texture is minimap render texture. So it's saying this camera is going to target this texture, so the output from this camera is going to this texture every frame. Then under our canvas with the minimap UI, you can see here it's being selected in real time, the background, and then we have a mask, and this mask is cutting out everything else so we don't see anything here, we just see within the circle. Underneath of that is the actual texture, which is blank right now because the game's not running. But look, the texture it's using is that minimap render texture. So anything the minimap camera sees, it's rendering to this texture, and this texture is being displayed here on our UI. Makes sense. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. I'm just kind of going over it quickly so that it makes sense to some of the new viewers. So what we're going to do is I'm going to duplicate this texture. So Control D, and I'm going to move it above it, just like that. And I'm going to call it level geo. Okay. Now we already have a texture set up for that, but here it is, a level geo texture. But to create it, you just right click and say create. I'm going to say it is under here, render texture. Okay. So let's call it geo minimap. Just I'll call it something different so that you guys can see it created in real time. There it is, geo minimap. So I'm going to go to my geo camera and say, hey, the thing that I want you to fill out is the geo minimap thing we just made. Click and drag it onto there. Then I'm going to go to this texture in the UI, pardon me. And what I'm going to say is, hey, the texture I want you to use and display is this one. There we go. And now you notice, look at that. All of a sudden we can see all of our land and everything. And at first you won't see this. You won't see this here right away because we need to tell the stuff in the world to be seen by that. So how we're going to do that, let's collapse our minimap prefab, is you'll see I have these islands 1 through 4 and this building. So the way I made these is with ProBuilder, and you don't have to have ProBuilder to do this. You can do it with any geometry, but I go ProBuilder, I make a little island. So I'm going to make an island. So there you go, and there you go. So I have an island now, okay? And once I've created that island, I'm going to make a duplicate of that island. Well, first I'm going to give it, normal texture to make it like a land piece. Then I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to slide it beneath all the visible world. All right. So then down here, I'm going to select just the top face, invert, and remove. Again, you don't have to do this with ProBuilder. You can do it with whatever. I'm going to put this special unlit colored texture, which is going to be what the minimap sees. We turn off our mesh collider because we don't care. It doesn't have to see it. But this is now going to be parented to that. So if I go up here, this is our new island. So let's call this new is land. There we go. And then this guy we're going to call new is land minimap. Okay, so this is the actual representation of our new island on the minimap. And I'm going to parent that to that. So that way, anywhere that I move this island in the game world. So if I go here and I were to say move him around, then you can see that his representation moves with him. Okay, so to get him to show up on the minimap, we're actually going to select the minimap object. And remember we made that layer for minimap geo. I'm going to select that. And boom, you see him show up right there. because now our camera that is looking for our minimap geometry is only looking for things that are on that layer. That's that culling mask thing we looked at. So we'll look at that again. So go here to the camera, culling mask, minimap geo. That means only things on that layer am I going to see. He's blind to everything else. So when we created our new island and we created this just the little top face which shows the outer edges of it, it's only when we set him to this layer. If I set him to any other layer, he disappears. So this is a good example of, say you wanted to make this a secret island or some kind of part of your level that is not visible, or you don't want it to show up on the minimap necessarily. I could put him way over here, okay? So he is not set, but these other guys are. So if I see each island here, island 1 minimap. See here, he's set to minimap geo. That's why the rest of these are showing up now, okay? So now if I hit play, and we should run around our world, we see all of our icons. There they are. There's all of our stuff. I'll explain that in a second. But now, as we're moving around, we see all of the islands that have everything set. But you'll notice, even if I get here, and I can clearly see that island in the distance, he should be on my minimap. But because we didn't put him into that layer, he's a secret island. He's an island that does not show up on the minimap. So this is a great way to hide secrets for your game or any bonus objectives, that kind of thing. Okay, but the rest of these guys are showing up nicely now. So you can see everything, and it's all relevant to where it is in the world. Very cool. Okay. So all that's working. Now, let's figure out how to make this building thing and make our cool buildings, okay? So our building is actually in several pieces, so let me explain. The way that the building works is all of our level geo is actually being shown on the map. And this guy doesn't have any tags or anything. He is purely representative of the world. But if I open up the building, you'll see he's got several things underneath him. He's got a top, a walls, a floor. Point light is just to light it up so we can see inside there. And then there's a trigger, special trigger with a special code. Okay, no problem. We're going to handle that. So let's look at it one piece at a time. If I go underneath the ground, you can see here, this is the island that shows up on the minimap. And then I have a top of the building. I have a walls and a floors. And then we have the code, and the trigger is actually up here. If I select the trigger, you'll see the trigger is in that doorway. And you just make a cube that fits that space, scale it any way you like. So the way that this is working is I made a special tag, and I called it map exterior, okay? So anything that I want to show up on the minimap when you're outdoors is set to map exterior. So the top of the building is set to map exterior, and so are the islands, okay? You'll notice that our hidden island over here, he is not set to that, because otherwise he would show up. So we don't want that. So then what I've done, pretty clever here, is just this top piece is set to map exterior, but the walls and the floor are not. They're set to another tag called map interior. That's for something else that I'm doing, but we don't need that. So these could be technically untagged and it would be fine. But either way, so it's just the map exterior are the things that are going to get hidden. So the way that the code works is this trigger volume that is here. Every time I exit it, so I enter it, and now I've exited it, and I'm in the building. So every time you exit it, it will flip-flop whether or not it is hiding everything that has the map exterior assigned to it. All right? We can kind of see that code if I look at the script here. Here's the actual script, but I'm going to open it up in MonoDevelop so we can see it better. Okay, so here's the actual script, and you can follow along. The way to follow along would be to right-click, say Create C# Script, and I called it IOMMS, so that stands for Inside Outside Minimap Script. Okay, so in my IMMOS, I'm going to make a public game object with the two brackets, map exteriors. So the two brackets means that this is an array, so it's a collection from 0 to infinity. We have no idea how many just yet. Then I'm going to make a public boolean, and I'm going to call it isActive. And so the boolean is true or false. So on start, I'm going to say map exteriors equals means fill my array with the following. GameObject.find game objects with tag, objects plural. So find game objects with tag map exterior. So get everything in the game world that has the map exterior tag and put it into this list. Make sense? I'm going to set isActive as to true, okay? So then, on trigger enter, Okay, enter. It could be exit or enter. If isActive is true, that means it's true that we are outdoors and we're about to go indoors. Then, for each game object, we're going to call our game object that we're currently dealing with, call it go for game object, in map exterior. So we're going to go through map exteriors and say for every single object in that list, go, game object we're dealing with, dot, get component mesh renderer. You got to do it just like this with the little parens, dot enabled equals false. So go through every object in map exteriors, every game object in map exteriors, get the component that is the mesh renderer that says whether or not we show it in the world, and set it to false. So turn them all off, and then set isActive to the opposite of isActive. So isActive equals, you do a bang, an exclamation mark, isActive means flip-flop that value. Okay, then else, so if isActive is not true, if it's false because we've gone inside, that means now we're going outside again. So then we're going to loop through our objects again, and this time we're going to get the mesh renderer and turn it to true. And then we're going to flip-flop our value again. There you go. So isActive, and I'll put the script up for you guys. Don't worry, you can follow along with this, but I'll put the script up as well if you need it. Okay. So with all that done, we have our trigger in place, and all it is a box, and then I have turned off the renderer because we don't want to see it. Under box collider, I have clicked the button for is trigger, so it is a trigger, and then I have attached this script. That's it. So then all you have to do is say anything that you want to be hidden when you go inside is what you set to that map exterior tag. So for me, that's the roof of the building and any islands, okay? So now, if you look carefully when I play now, because it's all set up and it's all working, I can roam around, and when I go inside, boom, it turns off everything. And one thing I'm going to do real quick, I did this in my example earlier, and I just feel like it's easier for you guys to see. I'm going to go to my player icon, and I'm going to make them much smaller. So I'm going to make them 5 by 5. There we go. Just so the player icon is this little dot now, but you can see better this building here. So now when I go inside, boom, all the exterior land is gone, and we're just focused on the interior walls of our building here, and it's based directly on the geometry of the building itself. So that means it's accurate to all the walls and interior stuff. So another thing I'm working on is making this get bigger. So zoom in the minimap when you do this too. So when you go in a building, now the minimap is showing you just what's inside the building, and then when you leave, boom, we bring everything back. Now the very eagle-eyed amongst you will have also noticed, which I've already noticed, and we're working on a new script for this, but the IOM script means that when I go inside, we trigger, we go outside, we come back. Well, if I put this on multiple, say this building had 2 doorways, then it is possible to go in this door and out another door, and then it would flip-flop incorrectly. So I'm working on a new script which will actually look at an object or an attribute to the player, and that's where we'll handle that Boolean. So then they can kind of ping pong off of the player to say the player's now indoors, and it will flip the value for all doors. And when you go outside again, it'll flip the value again, and then all doors will reference that one value. So I have a new script just about finished which will fix this for multiple doors. When I have that ready, I will put it on the site, and I will put out a message on Facebook or something to let you guys know. But for now, just with a single building, a single door, the concept is what's working, and that's what's awesome. So there you go. We can go inside and outside. We have a working mini-map. We have the ability to have multiple objects in the world. We can move the mini-map around. You can even scale it up and down if you want to. If you go to, I think it's Minimap UI. I think it's here. You can scale it. The scale is currently 1, but if I do 0.5, yeah, 0.5. Oops, 0.5, 0.5. I guess you only need the 2 for a 2D object. But there you go. You can make the minimap smaller, which now it's not displaying smaller. But I know there's a way to do that. I haven't looked into that thoroughly yet. Probably in here somewhere. Minimap scale. There you go, 0.5. Let's try that out. There you go. Tiny minimap. Which for me is even worse because now when you go inside, it's so hard to see the walls. I can see them, but on the video, you guys probably won't be able to see them very well. But there you go. So you can even change the size of the minimap you want. You can move it around. I'm going to leave that at 1 because That's what I like for this setup. But there you go. So I hope you guys have enjoyed very much as usual. Please let me know if you have any questions. I did speak with the creator of the Minimap script, and he said that version 2 is coming out very soon. So I'm going to give him all of my feedback, the good, bad, the ugly. I want to help him make it a better product. Not that it's a bad product, but just improvements are always welcome. Maybe I can work with him to integrate this whole interior, exterior thing and all that. But I think it's awesome, and I'm definitely excited to use it. The upcoming Global Game Jam next week, very excited for that. So I'm going to be using this as a part of that if it's applicable. But I just want to share this with you and share with you guys just kind of the concept of take something but don't just use it just as it is. I'm sure you can make it better. I'm sure you can add your own flair. So please do. And if you guys use this and come up with something awesome, please let me know. Please show me. Let's figure it out together. And yeah, let's continue to improve. And I'm excited for the future, guys. I'm very jazzed for this year. We've got a lot coming on. So please stick with me, and we're going to do some amazing things. And if you have questions, comments, anything you want me to work on, please send a message, and I will get right on to it. We'll add it to the list. We've got so much user interaction going on. It is crazy, and I'm just loving every second of it. So thank you so very much. So until next time, guys, as always, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.